Laurie talking about Salt Typhoon. For a little bit of background, Laurie's a senior security researcher for Public Safety Commission Europe with many years of experience in software development and infrastructure engineering. So now I'll hand over to him.
Thank you very much. Yeah, senior research. It's a stupid title. Senior software researcher, senior security researcher, mobile telecoms. Weird, isn't it? Anyway, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I obliquely work in Europe. So my paymasters are in Brussels. I work for a Quango, one of those horrible organisations that we got rid of because we did Brexit. Marvellous. Well done us. So yeah, really interesting job. I am currently working on FIDAL. FIDAL is a project to do with next generation, there's that word, next generation 5G mobile networking and the various use cases. It is a bit fluffy. EU CCS is less fluffy. What EU CCS is a critical communication system connecting multiple different countries in Europe, their police forces, their ambulance services, so they can collaborate together for cross-border disasters. That's much less fluffy. That is much more serious. And then PSC Europe are the Quango, if you want to call it that I work for. I contract to them and basically do bits and pieces of research on their behalf, and they're very lovely, and we try and do some social sciences stuff as well as doing hard cybersecurity stuff. So that's a little bit of background about me. I won't go into my history. It's really dull. It's really boring, apart from the fact that I've shaved my beard, and I regret that. So, 5G networking. Whoa, right, new stuff. So this is a system of systems we all connect to daily. Our phones connect to this all the time. Here is a logical diagram of what that looks like to an extent. You've got this kind of like bit below, which is like that user plane stuff. It's what we do, what we communicate with. And then over the top of it, you've got the control plane. That line is very important because that stuff at the top is what controls what you can access, what your relationship with your mobile supplier is, what you can do, and how you get charged for it. It's extremely complicated. I don't pretend to know a lot of it, but that's some of the kind of logical architecture. It's important to understand what that looks like before we go into the rest of this talk, because it's a little bit domain specific. Now, you can buy all of that from the likes of Nokia and Ericsson, whoever you like, Huawei. You can buy that equipment and you can just have it installed and have a relationship with those companies, and they come in and do the work for you. Or indeed, you can run it yourself. So this is a diagram from Red Hat's, what do they call it, Open RAN. Also, you can do OpenShift. So all of this is kind of like a logical diagram, again, of how you could deploy your 5G network. Indeed, if you wanted to deploy your own 5G network publicly, you could go to Amazon. You could use their services. You could say, I want to have my own 5G network, please. Can you spin me up? And they will. You'll pay a lot for it. But it's all about having a presence on a tower, presenting some signal. That signal can be consumed by a handset. Your SIM will tell you whether or not you can connect to that network, that slice, and away you go. So this should all be great, right? It's all 3GPP standard compliant. We're all really secure. Wicked, let's go. Sadly not. So, one of the things that's happened over the period from, say, November through to now, we've been hearing a lot of news from the US about how various parts of their countrywide mobile estate have been breached and have been subverted and then used to listen in on various different parties in the US government, high-profile US politicians, civilians, like wide-scale surveillance. So my first contact with this was, let's see, that article there. Where's that from? Bleeping Computer, probably. So AT&T Verizon reportedly hacked. Now, it was at this point that my employer came to me and said, like, can you do a bit of a study on this? We want to give some of our guys a little bit of a heads up on it when we're doing this mobile phone stuff in FIDAL. So yeah, fair enough. My research at that point was pretty scant. And actually, when I say I'm a security researcher, I don't do the hard stuff. I don't go around kind of like end mapping bits and pieces. I'm more of a soft researcher. So my job there was to kind of like get some info about it, get some intel about it, and start being able to tell people in Europe what they should and shouldn't do. It's an interesting one because, I mean, like, so when this came up in November, it was like part of the research that I did. So FBI and CISA together released this joint report. And this is like really interesting politically because it's attribution. And I think that's one of the things that over the previous administration, the Biden administration, they were quite proud of. I know a guy from CISA called Dick Tenney. He was very, very involved in Salt Typhoon disclosure stuff. At one of the conferences I attended with him, he was very proud of the fact that they had been able to do public attribution. So it's this group. So this was a big deal. And it's kind of pointing the finger. I want to also say that within all of this, the finger's being pointed by US authorities. I'm not pointing that finger. As far as I'm concerned, the US are pointing the finger over there. The Chinese government say, we don't do this, so fine. There's a logical inconsistency, and I don't want to explain that. Anyway, how they did it, how they get in. Now, this is basically just looking at CVEs. So you think back to the diagram, that logical diagram. You've got edge routers at the network. You've got people coming in and out of that network to do administrative functions. So they're popping in and they're configuring new slices. They're configuring new cells. Those are just like VPN gateways. So on this list here, you'll see that we've got Ivanti VPN exploitation. We've also got some Fortinet stuff. So from the attacker side, they're patiently waiting to find a device which exists on the edge of that network to control the 5G configuration, and then they spot the CVE, and then they dive in. And from diving in, they then start to move laterally. Another one you'll see up there, we'll come back to this as well, proxy logon. That's a vulnerability in Microsoft's Exchange platform as well. So interesting, there's like a number of different vendor players who have been breached over things that maybe look like, what's that, 2023, 2022, 2021 I see on those CVEs. Are those, they're not 0 days. So these are things that people have published and know about, and then nobody has done the good work to patch it. They've not closed the hole. So that's interesting in itself. So December. In December, then, we get this released from CISA again, Enhanced Visibility and Hardening and Guidance for Communication Infrastructure. This is a great document. This is one of these documents that you could read and just take good advice from for securing your network, right? It's got some really good stuff in there. Procedures and practices that you should follow. Levels of encryption that you should use, things in Cisco hardware, okay? Another vendor here, things in Cisco hardware that you should probably not configure the way that they're configured when they're implicated in this breach. If you read through that document, you basically get a long list of how the breaches were perpetrated. Because every part of that document that says, hey, don't do these things, and do these things, are things that were implicated in their research, the breach. So you can just logically see how they did it. And you know, this is, again, so like this is really late December. I think this was the 27th. This is great because, like, you know, we didn't get hit by this. This is only in the US. More about that later. And you've got, let's see, this is Anne Neuberger responding on let's see. I think she's responding about a question in a White House press release. What's this? So when I talked with our UK colleagues, I asked, do you believe your regulations would have prevented the Salt Typhoon attack? And their comment to me was, we would have found it faster, we would have contained it faster, it wouldn't have spread as widely, and we wouldn't have had the impact, right? So that's the US White House saying, we kind of messed up. And there's reasons why, right? There's reasons why they've messed up this way. So it's a federal system in the US. It's slightly different from the UK. In the UK, we have one set of legislation. If you run a mobile phone network, you should probably do all of this stuff, and there'll be standards and there'll be compliance. In the US, it's completely different. In their federal system of systems of mobile networks and providers, state law trumps federal law. The federal bodies, CISA, etc., do not have NSA, etc., do not have the clout to go to, California or Ohio or wherever and say, you should do it like this, because they can just say, look, it's our state, and state law governs it this way. So there's a lack of cohesion, a lack of alignment, and because of that, a lack of unified response. So that's one of the other reasons why this has been difficult for our US cousins to contain. Eventually then in January, we see this, again, pointing the finger, the Treasury says we now put sanctions on a Chinese cybersecurity company for being involved in this attack. So they attribute it again. So that's the kind of timeline of where we are. That was January, right? I kind of finished this, and I've done this talk at Fraser House. There's more that's happened since, and we'll go on to that in a second. But yeah, why was it so vulnerable in the first place? We talked about all of the mess of unpatched systems, the mess of political, legal reasons why it wasn't well protected. One of those things is this CALIA law. CALIA is a law enforcement law in the US about lawful intercept, essentially, that if you are a criminal or a suspect in a criminal case, then you, as a mobile provider of a criminal's phone, have to allow a legal body to come in and wiretap and monitor their communications and do all that kind of good stuff, right? For good reasons. However, that system itself was particularly weak. So there's a quote here from Meredith Whittaker, who is the president of Signal. It's like, there is no way you can build a backdoor that only the, quote, good guys, unquote, can use. And it's absolutely right. Essentially, if you have like a weak system that allows you to get under the hood and find out what everybody's doing, then someone's going to exploit that. It's a very interesting part of how all of this was perpetrated. So I think also around January, there was, or maybe late December, Senator Mark Warner, who's the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, goes on record as saying, the barn door is still, referring to this, the barn door is still wide open, or mostly open. Don't know what that means, but mostly open. That kind of means to me that it's still insecure. I also had dealings with some friends of ours from a company called FirstNet in the States, who are FirstNet are a responder group. They help fire, rescue, police kind of get mobile signals when they're out doing the good work they do to save lives. He told me that, yeah, as far as they were concerned, that attack was still going on within the kind of December, January period, 24 to 25. So there was things still happening, the collection of people's data, their movements, their phone conversations, their texts. Now, yeah, one of the parts to remember here as well is that this breach involved rootkits as well. So once you've got the rootkit on the system, you're kind of at a loss as a cybersecurity professional to remove that now. In some respects, some people advise that once you've been hit by a rootkit malware, don't use that system ever again. So that's like a large set of work to address the whole of the US mobile system and throw away these routers because they're no longer trustworthy and replace them all with these routers that we just bought. That's a huge cost. So yeah, really, really kind of interesting breach. But so the impact, right, let's go on to something here. So allegedly, Chinese hackers targeted phone from prominent political figures. We've got Trump and Vance and others are involved in that, especially from the Treasury Department. I don't have the names written down, but yeah. We have 9 telecoms companies. These include, let's see, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Spectrum, Lumen, Consolidated Communications, Windstream. That's not all of them, because again, some won't go on record as admitting to the fact that they were in it. And if the federal bodies said it was them, then that company could sue the government. So it's odd how these things play out. We can't really even know the extent of it. So broad access to large parts of the infrastructure. I hate lists in presentations. I wish that I'd put a picture here, because pictures are much more lovely. But yeah, so broad access to large parts of the infrastructure in some reports. A single breached admin password gave access to 100,000 routers. If you've got access to 100,000 routers at an admin level, you can monitor ports, you can mirror the ports, you can send that data elsewhere, you can do whatever you like. So the Treasury Department breach of December 24 is attributed to this campaign. Slightly different tactics and procedures used. I won't go into it in massive detail, but there were some interesting extra malware bits, I think called jumbled path, but they were using some of the infrastructure they breached to be able to get to the Treasury Department. Details of the wiretap numbers breached again to the attacker, compromised email accounts in the Department of Commerce. And yeah, as previously mentioned, they could basically geolocate millions of individuals and record their phone calls and send them off to be stored on another server somewhere else at will. This is immense. So how did it transpire then? Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it was ineffective management of the infrastructure. One password giving that wide access, that's not segregation of duty. That's not least privilege. That's ridiculous. The vulnerabilities had patches that weren't applied. I mean, again, this was avoidable, all preventable. Slow responses and insufficient logging. This is great, actually. So this is a quote again from Anne Neuberger. Everything we're learning, and we're continuing to learn about the incident, the Chinese, were very careful about their techniques. They erased logs. And in many companies, in many cases, those companies were not even keeping adequate logs. So there are details likely, Martin, that we will never know regarding the scope and scale of this. Does that not frighten you? That's ridiculous, literally. So a lack of federal mandate, as we've discussed already, to enforce high security hygiene, right? Now, and this is even more interesting, right? FedRAMP. In the case of the Treasury hack, the Treasury Department, it was an outsourced company. Let's see, I can't remember the name of them, but the outsourced company was FedRAMP accredited. So that means they've gone through a high security audit process to secure those systems. And yet, that was how they breached the Treasury Department. So it brings into question that whole nature of audited security. Is it good enough? And this is a first in type, actually, a first in type instance of where a highly secured company has eventually led to a breach of a federal body. So yeah, I guess what we're saying here is that the multi-organizational nature of how mobile networks are deployed. You saw that before, the diagram, in terms of how many different ways you could put that together. And there are many ways you can put together 3, 4, and 5G networks to interoperate. They don't all have to be operated or run by the same company. They don't all have to have the same infrastructure or hardware in them. It's a massive, complicated mess. And yeah, as mentioned before, only 7 of the 9 have actually gone on record to say that we were part of this. And T-Mobile actually said, well, it wasn't our fault, it was one of our suppliers. So, okay, cool. But it's still kind of your responsibility. Anyway, so we all learned our lesson. Yeah? We've all learned that we should probably be a lot more careful. Apparently not. So, I find this staggering. So this was in January, the end of January. 91% of all of the Exchange servers that you can find online still have that remote proxy vulnerability. 91%. This is not widely shared enough. Or the companies who are in charge of this infrastructure can't spend the time to patch them up to date so it can't happen again. It's interesting. And yeah, so we should have really good political backing, and our politicians should probably pay more attention. Obviously not, right? So, this is the cutover, the Biden-Trump cutover. So as Trump comes in, he basically starts to cut really, really key bodies, really key review bodies that were involved in finding this in